Mayong adlaw mga amigo, my name is Moon if you're new to my channel, and as you can see from the title of the video, this is my double book review for the books I Love You Since 1892 by Binibining Mia, and also the second book, which is The Furies by Katie Lowe. I really don't know how to pronounce her name. So these two books are actually very different from each other because I Love You Since 1892 is a historical romance book, while The Furies is actually a psychological thriller. So in case you only want to watch my book review for the first book or the second book, I'm going to put the timestamps down below so you can watch what book you want to listen a book review from. I don't know if that's a correct grammar, but I hope you understand what I have said. So without further ado, let's start. So hi, my name is Moon, and today we are going to talk about my book review for the book I Love You Since 1892, Ang Pag-aaklas, which is actually the second book of the I Love You Since 1892 series. In connection to this book review, this is actually one of my challenges which I have imposed for my I Love You Since 1892 read-along, in which I'm going to make a book talk or book review for the second book of the series, so now, here we are. Also, this book review will include, just like my other book reviews, the blurb, the characters, the plot, the writing style, and my overall thoughts for the book. Also, I'm going to place trigger warnings here because this book has a lot of triggers. For example, there is death, there is murder somewhat, and there is blood. So in case you didn't know, I Love You Since 1892 is a historical romance book set in 1891 to 1892 Philippines, in which a girl named Carmela traveled back in time to live the life of her ancestor, and she has a mission to save a guy named Bonito from his impending death. Also, I should say ahead that the book that I'm going to review in this video is the second book of the series, so somewhat you cannot understand this if you haven't read the first book or you haven't watched the reading vlog of the very first book of the series. So if you want to somewhat understand, you can watch the reading vlog. But I guess this review will be somewhat understandable. I still don't know. It really depends on the person. So now let's go to the characters. So I wanted to talk about the characters here, even though I have talked about them in my previous video, because I think the characters have developed somewhat from book 1 to book 2. They have changed a little bit. So I would love to talk about them. So let's start with Carmela, or the main character, or the narrator of the book. Carmela in this book is still very annoying. She's the typical YA protagonist, even though she's not exactly a YA protagonist because the age of Carmela here is like 19 to 20 years old. So this book is somewhat an adult historical romance, but still, Carmela is a typical YA protagonist in the sense that she does stupid decisions at times. However, I should mention though that Carmela has toned down a bit in this book. Her hashtag part, her phrase Holy Mother Queen, is limited in the book compared to book 1, so I will give kudos to that. However, her POV is still a little bit cringy, and sometimes I was like, Also, I should say that it's a little bit strange that Carmela, being a person who always claims that she has difficulty in talking in Tagalog, understanding Tagalog, that she was able to convey her emotions, her descriptions, the descriptions of the place, the descriptions of her actions into full Tagalog. I mean, this book is in her point of view. So every thought in this book, every word in this book came from Carmela. So I was a little bit shocked that I have seen deep Tagalog words in this book, even though Carmela has always claimed that she has difficulty in talking in Tagalog. Also, I find it really weird that as a person, she finds history class boring. And here in this book, she is capable in spitting out historical facts in every situation, which I find really weird. As what I have mentioned, the book, the whole series in general, is written in Carmela's point of view. So I find it really strange that she was able to spit out historical facts when in fact she finds history class boring. So now let's go to Juanito. So Juanito, just like the first book, is still a soft, kind man, which I have grown to love. He's just so sweet, so kind, family-oriented, thoughtful, obedient, writes poems, and also just a smart guy. I would die if this guy existed in real life, but then again, I am still alive right now, so this guy doesn't exist in real life at all. Juanito is the typical bookish boyfriend in which However, I should say that although I adore Juanito and also adore somewhat Carmela, I cannot say the same thing to like the side characters of the story. For me, they sound and look the same. Their descriptions are the same. The way they talk are the same. So I cannot really distinguish them, maybe except for Ignacio, which is like my other crush aside from Juanito. Ignacio is such a great lawyer. I just love him so much. Also, I should mention that this is for all Filipino Wattpad books. I find it really strange is like the word in this video, that most of the characters of their books are either mestizos and mestizas, and I find it really sad because as a Morena, I cannot see myself playing the characters in Filipino Wattpad books because that's not me. I cannot see any representation for me and for my fellow Morenos and Morenas. I mean, Juanito here is described as Moreno, but that's it. Carmela and Leandro are mestizos and mestizas, and I do know that it's because of the fact that their families have high positions in the government, but still, I would have loved to see Morenos and Morenas. So now let's go to the plot. The plot in this book, oh my god, it's just the best. I have never expected the plot to go this way at all. I am mind blown. To be honest, I have never expected this plot to be this brutal, to be this intense, to be this heartbreaking. Like, oh my god, the betrayals, the unexpected death in this book is just so surprising. Sometimes I even need to stop reading because I cannot comprehend as to what just happened. Like, oh my god, I would highly recommend this book for the plot alone. It is indeed true as to what they were saying, that you should not give up this series as soon as you have read the first book, because in the second book, shit went down, y'all. Like, I could not believe it. However, I should mention again that this plot would have been 100 times better if historical figures were added in the book. Just imagine meeting Jose Rizal when you went back in time. I would just faint. Like, I would faint. Also, it is a missed opportunity to include KKK in this book. I mean, there is a rebel group here named Katapang, and I think it would have been better if it is KKK because then it will be like connected to what really happened during the 1890s. And now let's go to the writing style. Just like my comment in the first book, the writing style definitely needs more improvement because when I was reading this book, there are some times when I hit a hurdle when it comes to places, when it comes to setting. It's kind of sad really because the settings here are very rich, but all I can see is the blank white wall. For example, there is a setting here in Intramuros, UST, Binondo. It's quite sad because back in time, I think the architectural designs of the buildings is real different compared to what we have now. I mean, that would have been amazing if the author has placed more descriptions in the book. So my overall thoughts for the book, I really enjoyed reading this book. The plot alone of this book is really fantastic and would highly recommend this book just for the plot alone. However, if you're the kind of person who is very particular with the characters and the writing style, I would not recommend this book for you. However, if you're like me who enjoys a really good plot, despite the characters and the writing style, I guess, this book is for you. And I actually rated this book 4 stars on Goodreads, which is kind of shocking. So now let's go and talk about the book The Furies by Katie Lowe. So I have read this book in participation to the Dark Academics Book Club, which is a club made by 5 girls in which they read dark academia books each month. So The Furies by Katie Lowe is a psychological thriller about these 4 girls who became friends in a private institution, I think in England. 3 of these girls were kind of suspected of the death of their friend Emily Frost, who went missing, and her body was eventually found inside a tree trunk. It is very creepy. So this book contained witchcraft, murder, death, secret societies, and etc. Basically, this book is the embodiment of the dark academia aesthetic. So before anything else, if you're interested in reading this book, you should be aware of some trigger warnings because there are a lot of disturbing things in this book. So here are my trigger warnings. There is blood, murder, death, rape, substance abuse, and mentions of suicide. So now let's go to the characters. I'm only going to mention 2 characters in this part because I think only 2 characters in this book warrant my attention at all. So let's start with Violet. So Violet is the main character, basically the narrator of the book, and she is a person who has undergone severe trauma in her life. She is a person who clearly needs some help because most of the time in the book, she is very confused. She only follows Robin everywhere, which is kind of sad. I think she just feels the need to belong somewhere because most of her life she feels isolated somehow. Her mother doesn't care of her at all, so it's kind of sad. However, despite that fact, I still find her really bland. She doesn't really have a strong personality for me to be very interested in her point of view. So now let's go to Robin, which I consider to be as the other main character, although she is not the narrator. Honestly, when I met Robin in a book, I am very disturbed and wary of his character. I don't think I can be friends with her if she existed in real life. She is the exact definition of a wild child, and if I mean wild, I really mean wild. I think she's the kind of person in which your parents will always tell you not to be friends with because she is just really dangerous. And now let's go to the plot. The plot for me is quite okay, I guess. Although it is a rather scary read, I still don't find it to be that intense. The plot basically goes like this: murder, peace, murder, peace, murder, peace, murder, peace. It doesn't really have that really strong build-up, a climax basically. The plot is kind of coherent, if I should say so myself. I love the additions of like tidbits of knowledge though. However, despite the fact that it doesn't really have that huge effect with the plot, it's just there to add some knowledge, I still love it. Like for example, when I read something connected to witchcraft, which is kind of a lot, there is a lot of tidbits of knowledge of witchcraft in this book. I became really interested about what really is witchcraft, what really embodies the idea of witchcraft back in the Middle Ages, because it's really, really interesting. And when I searched that, I was like, wow, that is some wild, wild stuff. Like, the stories which I have found, the articles which I have found is really interesting, and I love that the book has given me the opportunity to research more about it because, to be honest, witchcraft as a whole scares me, so I'm really, really thankful to have encountered it in the book so that I cannot be ignorant by it anymore. Also, the plot has included toxic friend groups, and it was portrayed very, very well because most of the time when I read some parts of it, which is usually most parts of the book in which a toxic like dynamic was brought up, I feel really uncomfortable. I always wanted to scream at Violet to leave these 3 girls because these girls are just the definition of toxic. It's really disturbing, and it was portrayed very well, and I should give kudos to the author to that because toxic friend groups in a book, if it is portrayed really well, wows me a lot. And now let's go to the writing style. The writing style in itself as a whole is scary and dark. The author has properly conveyed the genre through the writing style, in which I applaud. And now for my overall thoughts. For me, the book in itself was kind of boring, to tell you honestly. Just like what I have mentioned before, there is really no build-up, there is really no climax, so you're like, if you're reading the book, it seems that you're on standstill. There is no like end. I think that at least for me. So that's why I rated this book 3 stars on Goodreads. Because yeah, even though I enjoyed the book, it is still very lacking plot-wise. And also the characters are not that interesting enough, maybe except for Robin. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you like my 2 book reviews, please give it a thumbs up. If you have opinions, please comment down below and let's discuss. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.
Takten alla fullfest hela dagen. Mjöl från livets grottekvarn.